And I am really excited to have another discussion on solo aging. And these discussions are wonderful because I've got a co-host, and my co-host is Carol Marak. She is the author of Solo and Smart. And Carol, if you can jump on stage here, we will get this discussion started this month. And there you are, Carol. Great to see you again, and great to dive in once again to the topic of solo aging, which we know is a popular one with our community. Before we dive in, for some folks that may have not been on our previous discussions, tell us a little bit about yourself, and so that our audience gets to know you a little bit better.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Hi, everybody. It's good to be back. I think I was here a couple of months ago, right, Steve?
Yeah. I think that was our last discussion was last year.
Yeah, and here we are. Well, I'm Carol Marak. Originally, this was back in 2016. I launched a Facebook group called Elder Orphans. And from that, the topic of solo aging just exploded, which is very interesting, I think, to me. And what I find even more so is more interesting is that the topic of solo aging is growing, as you all may know. And it's a very tough one. I helped with both my parents. Dad lived with dementia, mom lived with several chronic diseases. So from that experience, I realized, oh my gosh, who's going to help me when I'm that old? So I got on the stick and I created a plan, which, by the way, is now ready to purchase. It is my workbook called Solo and Smart, a guided roadmap for a supportive and secure future. And I'm also designing classes for the roadmap. So it really is an instructional design workbook that helps you assess the 10 top domains of your aging, of life domains. And those, we can go over that a little bit later, but it deals with health, housing, support, friendships, and just so that you could get a really clear idea of where you're dissatisfied, where you rate low, and then where you rate high. Because what the book is all about is focusing on the things that aren't working well in your life. So I am going to teach people also how to create a better and more secure life. So it's very fun. I'm excited. So I just put my information in the chat. If you're interested in learning more about it, I invite you all to send me an email.
Great. And I think we are going to learn more about it, because one of the things that when Carol and I were planning this out is sort of like, it would be really cool to start featuring some solo agers. And the thing that I love about, like, those of us who have been in this business, we've heard that term elder orphan. And I swear, when I used to use that term, tears come to people's eyes, because you recognize the fact that there are so many folks out there, especially like in nursing homes and some assisted livings, that don't have a visitor. They don't have family anymore. They don't have a network. And it's heart-wrenching. And the elder orphan term is, I think we can all agree, is rather depressing. The solo ager term yes, it can be sad in some ways, but it's also can be very powerful. And a lot of the folks that I've run into are very proud to sort of carry the label of a solo ager, and that they're figuring it out and what have you. And so one of the things that Carol and I talked about was, we can feature some folks that are solo agers, hear their story, and use their story as an opportunity for discussion. So I'm excited that you invited Karen Isaacs, who is not only a proud solo ager, but has also used some of your systems. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's
Okay,
right.
great.
Yes.
So, Karen, if you want to jump on stage here, there you are. We're going to get to know you a little bit better, and then let's dive into how the two of you work together and some of the challenges and opportunities that we see. And again, to remind the audience, feel free to drop questions in, raise your hand, and we love making this an interactive discussion. But Karen, before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I will tell our audience, we're all over the country here. Carol's in Texas. Karen, you're in New York, and I'm in Washington, D.C. So, but Karen, tell us a little bit about your story.
Hey, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Carol. And I am a board certified patient advocate. So those who are even patient advocates don't know necessarily about the board certification. But I started calling myself a patient advocate back in 1976 when I started a business for helping doctors to find practices or to start practices. And I had a directory of all my doctors. And on the back of the directory, I put, if you don't see what you want here, call the patient advocate. And I had a 800 telephone number, and people would call me to ask questions. And I just got a reputation of, if you had healthcare issues or getting fired from your job because you were taking too much time off from work to help a family member, you could call me. And then in 2001, my office was blown up in the World Trade Center.
Holy cow.
50. My mother had passed away. And so I went into her apartment in Florida and took some training from Medicare, became a spokesperson for Medicare, and helping people in their home. And people would come in, and I had an office in the clubhouse. People would come in and ask me, can you help me to write my checks? Can you help me to get to the doctor? And I never had children, so just my husband and I. And we were very, very close. We did everything together, including our business, including all of these people that became our extended family. And we were with them through all their difficulties, and then many, many times we were the only ones at the funeral. So when I came back to New York, when things cleared up, I decided to switch over and to help the patients directly, and started my business, gethealthhelp.com. And I also, I work alone, just myself and my husband, but we use all kinds of services, all different kinds of professionals we bring into the fold. And basically we create a community around the individuals. So after meeting Carol and participating in the Elder Orphan group, I started to use that also and let people know about the situation, that there were a lot of people who were out there by themselves.
Now, I was doing some things with chat. Your husband passed away a year ago, correct?
Yes, so just a year ago he passed away, but I was able to, and we'll talk about that. I was able to really not also go through the his illness and his deaths by being able to have planned And so I had a lot, lots of resources to help me. But I had actually started to plan probably from the beginning of Carol starting Elder Orphans group. A lot of Carol and I had known each other before that, in some of the different questions that she had posted during her reporting times. And so I was able to really use all of these services. I had a death doula who helped.
I noticed that we've got some end of life doulas on this discussion. Val Walker.
It was wonderful. I have a widow's coach. So I use a coach for that. So people say, oh, you are doing this great, but it was a lot of planning.
Well, and we hear this often with people that work in the field and help other folks. Like, so for 40 years, you've been helping other people through challenges, but then a year ago, this all happened to you. And yes, you're probably probably a lot more prepared than the general public, but still, when you experienced it firsthand, sort of moving into truly kind of what we would define as solo aging, single with no children, was that still challenging, even though you had awareness of this?
Yeah, it's still a shock to the system, I should say. You may think that you know what to do, but without having a plan, I mean, people come up to you. That's something that I think is a recurrent theme in our elder orphan group, also about people saying things to you and hurt. They don't mean it as hurtful, but a lot of the things, are hurtful to say. Well, you should do this. Or why aren't you doing that? So that's really having your own plan. That's, you can say, well, this is how I planned it out. Is helpful in being able to respond to others who are asking you those questions.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for that overview. We're a huge fan of patient advocates in our community and spreading the word about that profession. And this is really an interesting take, with you being a proud solo ager with experience there, and then also tying into Carol and what she's doing to help folks. And Carol, earlier you had referenced your top life domains. I went to your website real quickly. Would it be helpful for me to put those on the screen and maybe give folks a brief overview of these domains and how your system works, and then perhaps how you and Karen work together as well?
That would be great. As a matter of fact, if you could go to my website, and then you'll see guided roadmap up at the top. If you could just, there you go.
Okay.
I think that's it, right?
Yep. Yeah,
yes. So those are the top domains right there. And when Karen and I worked together, the course that she took with me, as well as some of the coaching that she did with me, we really did address even higher levels than this. But since then, I've really broken it down into how do I assess my health? I know that many times I'm hearing an echo, so if you all bear with me,
I'm gonna turn my mic off.
Oh, good. There you go. Thank you. So, many times when we think about retirement or we think about planning for the future, we really focus on money and finances, which I think are terribly important. Absolutely. However, there are so many other top life domains like health and your faith and spirituality, your life purpose. Do you have purpose in your life? social connections, to make sure that you have friends and you stay engaged so that you don't become isolated and lonely and depressed. And then, of course, you need to make sure you have support in your life. That could be through your neighbors, hopefully. I highly encourage getting to know our neighbors, as well as even contacts and friends throughout your community. And of course, the nonprofit organizations like Area Agency on Aging is one of the top places to access help and support, as well as the one of my loves is the Jewish community centers, or it's family services actually. And then Alzheimer's Association has some really wonderful resources in your local community. And then you need to assess your location, where you live. Do you have access to these organizations, and even medical and healthcare, like hospitals? I mean, how far do you live from these different types of services? And of course, are you fit? Do you exercise? Do you have access to transportation? And I noticed that you're doing a webinar soon on transportation, free transportation, because there are a lot of available resources. So I really teach people on how to assess these top domains, including your finances and your legal docs. And then, of course, where you live in terms of your housing. So these are the top domains that I ask 25 questions per life domain, so that you get a really clear picture and idea of how satisfied you are with each one. And then you tally up the scores, and you can really focus on the least satisfying domain. And I really recommend that's where you start. Because for me, it was my money. Oh my gosh, my money really was bad. So that's where I focused my total attention, was on my finances. And lo and behold, in 7 years, I totally changed that around. And fortunately, I started my plan when I was 55, and I'm 70 now. So I am very grateful that I did this 15 years ago. And then I focused on my health, and I'm happy to say I'm in excellent health. I went from moderately well to excellent. So that's it right there, Steve.
Wow, that's great. Now, Karen, as you look at these top life domains, and you went through this process with Carol as well, can you share any insights and sort of like what are the areas that you focused on, or that you felt like you were challenged?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge was really in the depth of the questions, because it was easy for me to say, I'm in good health. You know, I have my purpose. This is what I'm doing. I have everything planned out. Nothing's going to happen to me. And really having to face the hard questions that Carol brings up. I did this over the summer, over one whole summer, where I sat up on my roof deck and surrounded by my plants, and just said, well, you know, it's a workbook, I'll breeze through it. And it actually took me the whole summer to just really face some of the things and take my time to answer them truthfully to myself.
Yeah, I think, Karen, you did an excellent job, because not only did you take your time, you really focused on where you fell short. And that is what is so important. You know, we can assume that our health is good just because we may appreciate and maybe our blood test results are pretty healthy. However, don't assume and don't ignore your family medical history. You know, what's the background of your genetics? because that can play a whole different role in your future. For example, chronic illnesses, for example. And I know that Karen did a splendid job because she kept asking questions. She continued to come back to me, and she was sincerely concerned about her future, which I say kudos to you, Karen, because you went through the death of your husband. I mean, not saying that it was easy. However, I think you went through it with much more confidence.
And I had, a chance to plan that. I was lucky, and I try to look at things positively. So I was lucky that I was able to have the time to get to feel comfortable with the fact that I probably was going to be, and people were asking me in the orphan group, well, you still have a husband, why are you in this group? And my husband had been sick for 10 years. It was a long process. And so it was pretty clear that probably I was going to be alone. And so I realized in hearing the stories that this was probably going to be me.
This, Karen, I'm glad you brought this topic up, because I like to bring what you just shared up on all these solo aging discussions, is that oftentimes when the topic comes up with solo aging, we just assume that everybody who's coming in here is, a widow or a single person without kids or what have you. And through our discussions, what we've realized is, just like I'm healthy now, but there's a chance I could be disabled this afternoon. Horrible to think about that. Just like it's horrible to think about the fact that my wife or I are going to probably outlive one or the other. We don't know what's going to happen. And so all of us, no matter how large our families are and how connected we are, we're potentially have the chance of being a solo ager. And because of your experience in this field, the ability to jump into this elder orphan group prior to your husband passing away is very insightful, and not an easy thing for people to do, or people to even realize, why would you do something like that?
People are, many of my clients are people who have family that are either distant or estranged, or even in situations where they had been abused or embezzled from their family. And so even though people would always say, don't you have any children, or don't they have any children? That isn't necessarily the person who's going to be helping them. So yes, they could have that, but
no, this is great.
Having to make your own decisions. I mean, even there are people who have children, but they prefer to make their own decisions. They say, I'm doing this. So,
yeah,
that's still something that, you want to do this kind of planning for yourself if you don't want somebody else making the decisions for you. You can say, don't put me in the nursing home, don't send me to assisted living. But if you haven't made the plans for yourself, then that could happen.
Yeah, I especially appreciate the stories of some of the clients that you talked with me, that you told me about. And some of them were actually horrific. I couldn't believe how some of your clients ended up, because they either did not prepare for this aging process, or life just threw them a huge curveball and they ended up in a not so good situation. So some of the stories that Karen has experienced with her own clients are truly awakening to, it certainly woke me up too. And that's why I think I'm just so grateful that I planned ahead, as well as have people like Karen, patient advocates in my life.
Great. Well, the not surprising, the comments and questions are coming in faster and furious. So let's address a few of these, and we can, go off on different tangents and what have
Mhm.
you. But let's see. First one says, "Thank you for the roadmap explanation. Can you talk some more about financial planning and reorganization? Facing the hard questions as caregivers, often taking care of both parents, aunts, uncles, neighbors, church members, and others, giving so much love and care. Many times your finances in retirement and care plans have to be totally reorganized. Could you talk about this a little bit more?"
Sure.
Really
Sure.
good.
Well, and that's exactly what happened to me because I became a almost full-time caregiver for both my parents because they absolutely refused for us to hire help. They just wouldn't do it. And so I had to cut back on my work. I worked part-time at one point in my life. And Steve, you want to turn your mic off? I'm getting feedback again. Thank you. That's a good question. And that's what I did. Once both my parents then passed away, once they were gone, I went to work in terms of focus only on work and making money. And then and believe me, I'm not a financial advisor. I did hire a financial advisor, which I highly recommend if you don't feel capable of managing your own finances. However, I really buckled down, made more money, and I'm telling you, I saved, and I still don't. I am so frugal, it hurts. It really is. However, I think that's very smart because I don't make a lot of money anymore. However, when I was making more money, I was able to save a lot. And I'm still with the mindset that I'm very frugal. So, and then I eat very healthy. So I really focus on ways to keeping myself healthy, saving money, not spending money, and just saving everything that I have. Does that make sense? I hope it answers your question.
Great explanation there. Karen, do you want to chime in with any financial aspects that audience member?
And think, a lot of the people who are on this call, are caregivers of some type or in the business. And I think, probably number 2 topic behind yourself would be fraud and embezzlement. And so a lot of my clients, I do act as power of attorney and healthcare proxy for a number of people, even pay for Social Security. And my clients are people with PhDs, they're former lawyers, doctors, and still they, at the time when they started to have either memory problems or even physical problems, they were no longer able to handle their own affairs. People come out of the woodwork to take over things, and sometimes not with the best intentions. And so I would say probably 80% of the people that I work with have had financial issues that they did not cause. So,
well,
setting up something previously, as Carol said, having a fiduciary of some type that is watching at the same time is really important.
And one of the professions that's very helpful for that we feature on our discussions is daily money managers. They are oftentimes very skilled at identifying fraud before it happens. But Karen, you bring up something is that you're traveling along in life with your loved ones, your couple, you're a couple, you're a team. And without thinking about it, now all of a sudden, your spouse passes away. Now you're alone, and you could be lonely and isolated. And when you're in that vulnerable position, that's where we see most of the fraud being committed against older adults. And so this is another reason to sort of have that solo aging plan, because it protects you and your assets. Judy Herr asks a question of Karen. You had referenced the hard questions that Carol asked you. She was hoping you might be able to remember some of those hard questions.
I think, they're, when you are still working and you're still thinking that the, time is open, I'm going to have, my clients are usually in their late 80s and their 90s, even 102. And so when you're 65, you think, well, I'm never going to retire. I'm going to keep on working. And so that, having to look at, can I, will I be able to physically do the things that I'm doing now? And will I be able to mentally do them? Of course, everybody thinks yes. That's the hope. And I always ask people, would you rather have terrible pain and all kinds of illnesses, but have all your wits about you, or would you rather not know what's going on, but you have no pain? And most people say they want to have their mind. And so I think in answering these questions, I had to say, would I be able to physically, will I be able to physically do the things that I think I want to do? Will I physically and mentally be able to do these things?
There. Sorry, I'm turning my mic on and off. I need to have a quicker trigger finger. Yeah, that's in the conversations that I have with people, it's like that, I would say, is probably the toughest situation, is to sort of imagine what would be like if you weren't cognitively there or not physically there. And if you don't put some thought into that, and if you don't share that with your network around you, nobody knows what to do. And that really creates a lot of pain and tension in families and in those people that really want to help you. And I think that broad topic of looking into that crystal ball and imagining if you lose your health or if you have a cognitive decline.
And there's something I want to interject here, and that's why it's so important to have a local support team. That could be friends or your neighbors or people that you can rely on or you trust. Because I have a certain set of really close friendships where I live. And we have discussions like this. We talk about, having enough money, ways to save, housing. We talk about our finances, and the types of doctors we want to go to. We talk, and so my point being, when you have a close support team that you can trust, have these conversations, because you're going to learn a lot from one another. And because you can't operate in a vacuum, you can't get answers in a vacuum. You have to create a sense of kind of camaraderie and insight and to exchange different types of information. Even when you call associations like maybe you're talking at like the Alzheimer's Association or the Jewish Family Center. They have wonderful case managers that you can have some of these conversations with. As a matter of fact, I had several of these conversations just 2 weeks ago for a woman, a friend of mine, who is taking care of her mother with Alzheimer's, and she has no clue what to ask. So I helped her out. And I learned so much from these case managers. So these are community resources. So please access them and get to know what's available in your area and start writing this down and sharing this information with your support team, your support system.
This is great advice. Now, I glanced over and I noticed that Joy and Emma had their hand raised, and I'm really excited that Joy Laverty is on this call because next month she's going to be a part of our subject team on solo aging. Joy, can you hear me? Joy? Oh, well, let's see if Emma is, Emma's got her hand raised, so I'm letting her unmute. Joy and Emma, if you'd like to make a comment, I have opened up both of your mics, and it looks like we've also got Arlene who raised her hand. So if one or all of you can open your mics up, then and ask your question, that would be great.
Okay, so I don't know if you can hear me okay?
It's Arlene.
Whoops. Okay,
That's
now
Joy.
everybody opened up. Okay, is this Arlene or Joy?
Arlene here.
Hey, Arlene.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
Well, no, more of a comment, kind of a question sort of thing. A lot of those things that, well, first of all, I'm going to be 82 in a month. So I've been retired now for 20 years. I have a financial planner, which I've had since I was in my 20s, and he's been great. And we've done things like get a life insurance policy, which I can draw from if I need extra funds, those kinds of things. So on the financial end, I'm pretty good. As soon as I retired, I did lots of traveling and really was having a wonderful time and am in good health, all things considered. And then in December of 2017, and this is what my basic comment is for everyone, even if you think you're in great health, I woke up for about a week and kept having headaches. Now, I've had migraines all my life, but these were different in that they didn't go away with the medication. In addition, when I chewed, I had pain in my teeth. And when I touched my hair, I had pain. These were all very odd symptoms. So I sent my neurologist, because I have one because of the migraine, an email. Within 3 hours, she emailed me back and said, you need to get lots of blood work done. Go immediately. Do not wait. This was a Friday afternoon. Do not wait until Monday. Go immediately. Well, I didn't read the email until Saturday morning. I read it. I have Kaiser Permanente. Their lab is open on the weekend. I was at an all-day seminar on aging alone and well. I went over, I got the labs done, and she called me back on Tuesday, and she'd already told me what she thought it was, so I wasn't surprised. And she said, she called me on her phone in my car and said, you need to get a biopsy in your brain ASAP. Well, you know, I wasn't surprised, I wasn't hysterical, because I essentially anticipated it. So my point in all of this is, even if you're in great health, things happen. This was a rare autoimmune disease that tends to strike women over the age of 70. Etiology is unknown. I've never heard of it. And so fortunately, with good health care, I got the biopsy within 5 days. It was this disease. And I spent 2 years on high doses, like 60 milligrams of prednisone, which kill your whole body. You gain weight, you blow up and everything. But the good news is that as of March of 2020, I'm in remission. However, then we had COVID. So this is my point that I'm trying to make. You think you've made plans, you've done a good job, you're in good health, and things do happen.
Yeah, I think, you know, can I
So-
Can I just, interrupt you for a minute and just say,
Sure.
I think this is why Carol keeps bringing up, when people ask, how about finance? She brings up health, because I say, when people call me, they always say, I just want to talk about the financial situation, because they don't want to bring up or face it themselves, the healthcare issue. And so they think that, you think that people would want that privacy? People always ask me, what about HIPAA concerns? No one has ever asked me to keep things private.
Exactly.
And they tell me all their financial information, but the truth of it is that everything really relates to the health, because
And
without knowing what your health is, and as Carol said, what the possibilities might be, or if you thought about, what if you, as Steve had said earlier, I don't know if we were on camera then, about, what if an accident happens? Falls are the number one reason people go to the hospital. So all of these different issues really relate to, is there a hospital close to you? Do you have a good primary care physician? Have you checked that? Are you aware of things that have happened in family history? And
even when you have all of that, which I had family history, I have good health care, all of that. Out of the blue, this happened. I had never heard of this disease. Anyone I ever talked to had never heard of this disease. Now, when I researched the Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic and NIH and my healthcare, they all had it there, and it all said rare disease, primarily women over the age of 70, unknown etiology. So there it was. And thankfully, I'm okay, but one never knows. And I just wanted to bring that up. Steve, you're muted.
Sorry. Thanks, Arlene, for sharing that. Here I'm gonna, she turned her mic off, and I think we've got Joy has her mic open now. Joy, and I'm gonna put up on the screen, this is the same Joy that's gonna be with us next month. But Joy, did you have a question or comment?
I have a comment. Carol, you started to talk about the importance of your wonderful elder orphan group. We all know that it's an online organization for people to come together. So my question for you is, will you please expand on your criteria for a quality local friendship? Because we all know so well that most of the people we will depend on will be people who can come to our rescue in person. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Joy. I appreciate the
question.
question. Can you hear me okay? You should.
Absolutely.
Let me preface making friends and trustworthy friends is that it takes time. It took me 2 years to find really good friends, trustworthy people here where I live, because people just at our age just don't warm up automatically. But for me, it was important to have close relationships right where I live. And I fortunately live in a high rise. I live in a building. Most of us are over the age of 45. So when you're assessing friendships, you have to really also look at how well you are open to making friends. And please don't rush through this. Don't count on people to step up for you. Take your time. That's why it's important to make friends and build a social support system while you're still in good health. You're able to get around. You're able to take care of yourself very well. But so the long story of it is to take your time and to be open to meeting new people.
That was a great reminder and overview. And I'm drawing a broad stereotype here, but I've run into this dynamic so often. I want to bring it up, and that is the couple where one spouse is sort of the social activity role is being played, and the other spouse has other important roles that are being played. And you could look at this with lots of relationships. The person that cooks the meals, the person that mows the lawn and cleans the gutters out, and the roles that we play in relationships. But this friendship one has come up so many times where when the cruise ship director side of the relationship is the one that passes away, that surviving spouse can be lost in this friendship making. And I think it's important in planning and thinking of the future that we begin to sort of share ideas and strategies. If I'm the one that passes away, I want to make sure that you're not lonely and isolated, you know?
Right.
I think, this is why people say to me, oh, you're doing wonderfully, but it was because I had, I'd say participation. And also besides the local group, and I think, this is something that a lot of the many elder orphans talk about, if they live out in the boonies where there's nobody. Several of the people in my widow support group recently retired and thought that, well, now we're going to have our wonderful life. And then one of the spouses passes away and the other one is sitting there without, knowing how to, make new friends. But I think that it's really great now to have the availability of all these individual Facebook groups, as opposed to just saying, I have my friends on Facebook and I just talk to my family and my friends and I'm posting what I'm interested in. But if you, can Google or search any of the groups, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever it is, your choice.
Nextdoor is another good one.
Clubhouse. I just started doing Clubhouse.
Yeah.
I have a group. I joined a group. It's 555. It starts at 5:55 in the morning. So it's only for an hour, and you quickly make some good friends who have the same kind of interest as you do. Because right now with COVID brought up, I am not seeing my clients in person. I have to speak to them on the phone. So I was able to go on vacation for 6 weeks and not worry about having to run to the hospital to take care of somebody I was healthcare proxy for, because the doctors had to call everybody. So it didn't matter. They had to call me and I was able to handle everything over the phone and send it to them by email.
Yep. So let's see. We got a few hands raised. So Emma and Benita, if you open up your mics, we can you can share any. Oh, it looks like Benita is open now. Benita?
I want to recommend the villages. We in the Washington area have the largest number of villages, and they have been so extremely supportive during the pandemic. They have organized so many worthwhile virtual programs that have been helpful in every way. So I really recommend anyone to either volunteer, or if you're senior, like in your 70s or 80s, to join the village in your area. And all you need to do, for instance, I'm a member of the Northwest Neighbors Village. You would just go on to nnv. I think it's org.
Well, actually, I just dropped in the National Village to Village Network website, so folks can find a village in their area. And if there's not one in your area, you can get it started. It's a great organization. I'm really glad you brought that up, Benita.
Yeah, I know of a woman that attended one of my classes. She knocked on her neighbor's doors, and she was very persistent because she was determined to get to know her neighbors. And she started a list of her own contacts of the people in her neighborhood. And they started reaching out to each other, making calls, running errands with each other. And now she has built, within a year, has built a really superb supportive group in her neighborhood.
This is a great question that Debbie D just added. And this is, I've got my friend sitting on a couch behind me. I just want to suggest to folks to also plan for their animals. I have a service dog, and I want to be sure he is taken care of when I'm gone and doesn't end up in a shelter. I have it all written down so that it's clear and what my wishes for my animal are when I'm gone. I have no spouse or children. I've asked good friends to be involved with this process. I really, Debbie, I'm glad that you brought that. And, I'm going to invite Mindy Fellington, who is an attorney who does pet trusts. It was a blind spot for me, as you had just shared, is that these are our loved ones and they mean so much to us. They can also be very helpful in helping us find human friends. Trust me, the reason I know everybody in my neighborhood is because I walk my dog every day. Great suggestion there.
And I think, the location, all of these different issues, the location, I have a business in New York and also thought that, well, I have to be in New York because I have to stay here until all my clients pass away. But in really looking at what kind of living arrangement, you brought up assisted living, independent community, these continuing care communities where you buy in and then you have that. All of these are like outside of what somebody else thinks would be a great thing for you. But once my husband passed, I did say, well, not that I was going to move. I still said I have to stay. But I said, well, I could invest in something that would be my next step so that I could take my time and really make sure that it was something that I was going to enjoy and that I would plan myself as Carol did to say, how will I have these things surrounding me? And then I went there. So that's why I just spent 6 weeks in Florida looking around at different places. I didn't just look at facilities. I went first, I assumed I would be 55 and over. And in looking at the different situations there, I actually found out that I probably don't want a 55 and over because I like to be where I live now is very intergenerational and I enjoy that. Then it was, well, I need to have a condo because I want to have people in the surrounding building. I don't want to be in a house by itself. I don't want to take care of a house. I don't want to be, not looking out the window and not have anybody that would be passing by. And then sort of opened up to, well, there are a lot of other kinds of living arrangements that I hadn't really even thought of. And then that brought me into, well, I'm doing a lot of traveling. And then I found out that there was solo travelers groups that I could join. And I got a lot of discounts and I got a lot of tips about how to travel alone or how to meet people when you're traveling. So when you start, that's the idea of going through the process, because you want to just open up all these different areas and then one thing leads to another and you really think about what you want, because so many people do it and then say, oh, I would have done it differently if I had known about this. Well, now we have the opportunity. You can really learn all of these things online and by going there.
Well, the great suggestions. And I looked at the clock and it's almost 1 o'clock, but are you all okay hanging on for a few more minutes? Because I'd like to address some of the questions that came in. And then for anybody that needs to jump off, this will be this is recorded and it'll be up this afternoon, as well as I make a copy of all the chat that is that you see there. So if you see somebody you want to connect with, you'll be able to connect with them. But let's dive into this. Is Brianna says, what do you suggest for those who are introverts? There are many out there who it's important for them to have supports in their life, but it isn't important to them. How would you encourage them? I'm interested in your all's feedback on this, but one thing that surprises people is that I consider myself an introvert, but where I feel comfortable is when I'm with my tribe. Okay, so I feel comfortable with you all because we're talking about aging topics, and that's something that I'm passionate about. I feel comfortable when I'm with my cycling club because I love riding bikes. But if you throw me to a random Chamber of Commerce meeting where it's all different businesses and things like that, a lot of times I don't feel that comfortable. So my personal advice for introverts is just make a list of all the things that you're interested in and go seek out those types of organizations or Facebook pages or things like that. And you'll find that it's a lot easier to sort of break out of any shell that you might be in. And I know what it's like being in those shells, but I'm curious, any words of wisdom that you two have for somebody that considers themselves an introvert?
Oh, absolutely. Because I'm an introvert. And I actually hired a life coach to help me break out of my shyness. And she took me through a process which literally forced me to connect with strangers. And I am so grateful I did that, because now I feel like I've moved up a notch in my extrovert. Now I've become more of an extrovert because she taught me how to become more comfortable with talking with strangers. And where I started was at the grocery market. That's where she had me start. She had me make eye contact with the patrons around me. Just make eye contact, say hello. She had me make eye contact with the clerks wherever I shopped and start a conversation. So that's where I started. And then lo and behold, within a few weeks, I was talking to strangers in the parking lot. And believe me, that is so unlike me. And then I started, because I was also taking public transportation, I started having conversations with people on the bus. So there is an actual strategy that I talk about. I talk about this in my assessment, in my roadmap, how you can break out, not necessarily stop being an introvert, because I enjoy my private time. However, you don't have to stay in that small world, and you can move past being uncomfortable with talking with strangers. And I highly recommend it. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to give someone your phone number. I'm just saying we all need to move past being shy, because introverts are. And now I have to tell you, I'm just very grateful, because I'll talk to anybody now. And it's helped me tremendously in building a stronger support system.
That great advice, and thanks for sharing. Like just hearing that you considered yourself shy and that you sought out a life coach to help you with that challenge. This is in alignment with what you were talking about in the beginning, is the willingness to be vulnerable and say, I would like to be better in this area of my life. And oftentimes, like, having a coach or somebody like you, Carol or Karen, that is by your side to help us improve in these journeys. This is why we all hire personal trainers, folks. Like most of us have done that at one point in time. It's sort of like you might be good at one aspect of athletics, but your personal trainer is going to push you to be better in an area that you're open to improving. So
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
And just doing this
Yeah.
right now, I just, this would have been my 50th wedding anniversary coming up.
Oh.
So what I decided to do was to just go out there and take a trip and do things that we would have done. So I was also able to do things that I would do that he wouldn't have done. But I am obviously somebody who enjoys the spotlight, and I'm always willing to grab the microphone. But going into an area where it was very aware that I was there alone, going to restaurants. How many? Every single place I went to, they start out with how many, and saying one. Getting the feed, sort of sorry feedback, and maybe being steered towards one of the lesser tables. What I did was I went on all the tours. I went to tour NASA. I went to all the different boat trips that they had. And one woman who was very frail looking, white haired, actually, it was like she was going to climb over the chair to sit next to me because she wanted to have something to say. So here I was thinking, well, I'm going to go there alone. I'm not going to try to take over. I'm there to learn. I'm there to see other people, what other people like. I'm trying to find out, where do I fit in when I'm not Karen from New York? And what I found was that, as you said, Steve, I went to things that were of interest to me. So I went on fishing excursions. I went to look at the dolphins. And then I went to out with real estate person. So it wasn't only professionals. It was just putting myself in an area where I knew I was going to enjoy myself. And then people were there who were also enjoying the same things, and they wanted to talk about it.
All right, I know we can go for a long time here, but let me do some quick questions here. One is, Karen, so do you offer any care or advocate services to people that are solo agers? I believe you sort of shifted your practice to really focus on.
I find ways for aging icons to continue their life's mission. And that is my specialty, because there is so much need out there. I also mentor people who want to become a patient advocate, but I was trying to put in the chat the main organization that helps us to is for people who want to get into the patient advocate business, is the Advo Connection, Trisha Torrey. And
Great.
then the board certification, patient advocate certification board, is where you would take a test. But I'm also on there's local groups everywhere. So when people want to become a patient advocate, I say the first thing to do is to find your local professional groups. I'm co-chair of a group called Senior Umbrella Network, which is all types of services for seniors. And then I'm also on the board of and moderate a program for people who want to be who are patient advocates, but also are family patient advocate or caregiver patient advocates. And I'm putting that information into the chat.
Great. And then Carol, Carmen Roy asks, when will your book be coming out?
It's ready now.
Oh, great. So
Yeah.
just go to Carol Marak.
Carol at carolmarak.com.
Okay, great. And then this is Andrea says, has anyone found an organization that talks about the challenges of having autism and being a solo ager? My father was likely on the spectrum, but as we know, nobody was testing back, decades ago. And it's a whole different conversation having to explain to caregivers that he wasn't depressed per se. His behaviors were part of who he is. Now, Andrea, with a bunch of the questions, I'm going to share my screen here because, I guess I wasn't tapped into just how extensive the groups are on Facebook. And so, Andrea, what I did was I went under Facebook groups and I typed in aging autism. And as you can see, there are dozens of groups here that Autism Awareness for All Ages, Autism and Aging Think Tank, and there's 13 members there. Now, this isn't a commercial for Facebook, but it's definitely a resource that makes it easy for connections. If you have a Facebook page, you don't need another login and you're not going to another chat group. And as you heard Karen, it's been helpful for her in terms of making friendships in this COVID-19 world as well. So hopefully that was helpful. And this ties into this other comment here. It says, if you have a wonderful group of friends for years and then they start to die, you lose that support group. Making new friends when you're over 80, stuck in the house due to COVID is very difficult. What suggestions? And I think we've thrown out a bunch of suggestions, and I know that it's challenging, but some of these Facebook groups can be, as our panel members had shared, can be helpful. Okay. Well, Carol and Karen, I think we have addressed most of the questions and comments, but folks, this topic is we're on it. I mean, we know that this is an important topic. I love the directions that things go. Every solo aging topic conversation we've had is a little bit different. And this one sort of leaned into the making friends topic a little bit more than maybe some of the other ones. And so maybe we can dive a little bit deeper in that area. I also really appreciate somebody bringing up the pets. I'm going to work on that one. But just a reminder, on March 2nd, we're gonna dive into this topic deeper with our friend Joy Lavardi, who is the author of the book Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old and the Complete Elder Care Planner. So just, we hope that we can be a resource for everybody out there in making connections. And who knows, maybe some friendships were made on this discussion today.
Absolutely. That's great. Well, that's the whole purpose of coming together, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, Karen and Carol, I want to thank you so much, and for your willingness to stay over a little bit longer. And I'll make sure to share your contact info with everybody. And folks, this recording and everything will be the chat will be available. So we will see you soon. Carol, we'll see you next month.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks.
Thank you, Steve.